The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, heroes in a half shell, icons of a school lunchbox circuit, and absolute chaos merchants when it came to naming conventions. Not to be confused with the Manhattan Project, where a team of boffins built a bomb so powerful it flash-fried 2 cities and jump-started the Cold War. This Manhattan Project was somehow even more radical, and involved significantly fewer war crimes. Still, it does leave me wondering, who on earth thought that was a tasteful name for a children's game? Especially one developed in Japan. But hey, it was the 90s. We were all necking Sunny Delight and licking batteries like it was a rite of passage. So who am I to question the wisdom of the marketing department? But the real question I'm posing today surrounds the game's ridiculous chronology. Yes, it's one of those games, a title that numerically confuses collectors, defies clean naming conventions, and was released under a different number depending on which continent you were unlucky enough to be born on. But behind all of that confusion lies a genuinely impressive little beat-em-up that pushed the NES to its limits, and arguably delivered the most refined Turtles experience ever made for 8-bit hardware. So, let's celebrate it today. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. Join me today as we have plenty of mutant mayhem to uncover on why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, the Manhattan Project, wasn't just a stopgap release between arcade ports, but a bold, technically savvy and criminally underappreciated work of art for Konami's Turtles on the NES. Yeah! We've genuinely been spoiled lately with some of the best beat-em-ups in years, but here's the mad bit. You can now grab a bunch of them for pocket change. Use my links to snag Shredder's Revenge for under $15, Streets of Rage 4 for less than $10, and one of my all-time favourites, Double Dragon Gaiden, for under a $5. I've got massive discounts on thousands of games via the pinned comment, including up to 40% off brand new games like Fatal Fury City of the Wolves and Expedition 33. Every purchase helps support the channel and bags you a bargain, so happy shopping and happy gaming. Now before we talk about the game itself, we need to untangle the frankly ridiculous naming spaghetti that is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles video game timeline, because trying to make sense of it feels like being hit with a manhole cover. The Turtles' first outing on the NES came in 1989 with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, or as it was known in Japan, Gekikami Ninja Den, which loosely translates to Fierce Turtle Legend. No mention of mutant ninjas there. This version was a well-known hybrid platformer with a quirky overhead map that continues to polarise the fandom to this day. Released that same year, many preferred the 1989 arcade release, the 4-player side-scrolling brawler full of colour, chaos and authentic cartoon flair. In 1990 it was ported to the NES as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, the arcade game, which lots of people believe to be a solid effort, though severely scaled back due to the NES's hardware limitations. Then, in 1991, things get confusing. Japan received a brand new NES exclusive Turtles game on December 13th, titled Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, The Manhattan Project. That's right, 2, because they didn't get the arcade port until later, so this was technically only their second NES Turtles game on the hardware. I'm not sure what's more shocking, seeing the games appear in a completely different order, or the fact they still called it the Manhattan Project despite it being, the code name for Japan's darkest hour. A bit like naming your kids' party game Operation Rolling Thunder. I mean honestly, who signed off on that? Was there no one in the localization meeting who raised a hand and went, hang on lads, maybe naming a fun beachside beat-em-up after a nuclear weapons program is a tad on the nose? Obviously, no one spoke up. Meanwhile, over in North America, the very same game dropped in February 1992, where a bit more logic applied to the naming. It was released as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, because for Western audiences, it was indeed the third NES outing for the Turtles. A rare display of chronological sanity in a naming saga that otherwise treats one of the most devastating chapters in modern history like a throwaway pun for Saturday morning entertainment. Europe, as usual, was left out in the cold. The game never received a PAL region release during the NES's original run. Unless you're imported or emulated, the Manhattan Project simply didn't exist. And if you only knew it from playground rumours, you could be forgiven for thinking it was some dodgy bootleg where Donatello discovers uranium. To make matters even more convoluted naming-wise, the Super Nintendo would later get Turtles in Time as Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 4, even though arcade fans had already played it the years prior. To add to the fun, there was numbered handheld titles in the mix too, but let's not lose our minds. The point is, if you're confused by the titles, you're not alone. Even the Turtles themselves probably had trouble remembering what games they were in. So now that we've navigated the timeline like it's a sewer map drawn by a lunatic, let's talk about what makes the Manhattan Project different. Unlike its older siblings, the arcade port that limped onto the NES, the Manhattan Project wasn't trying to squeeze a big flashy cabinet down into an 8-bit shoebox. This wasn't a port. This was built from the ground up, exclusively for the NES, and it shows. It was developed by Konami's B Team, a charmingly named unit called Team Kuneru Asobu, which roughly translates to Eat, Sleep, Play, a fitting name for a squad still squeezing the last drops of magic out of the NES while the rest of the company had already jumped ship to the Super Nintendo. Despite playing second fiddle, this so-called B Team absolutely punched above their weight. The programming was handled by Satoshi Kishiwada, Takashi Kondo, and Yasuhiro Yamamoto. The visuals came courtesy of Konami's in-house pixel wizards, Yasuji Terada, Tetsuru Iguchi, Tetsuya Sato, Masaki Kishimoto, and Fumimasa Katakami. And the soundtrack, that was composed by Yuichi Sakakura, Tomoya Tomita, and Kozo Nakamura, who between them would go on to lend their musical talents to the likes of Castlevania and Goemon. In short, the Manhattan Project wasn't just some NES filler title, it was a well-oiled, late-generation showpiece built by a hungry team who weren't ready to let the NES go quietly into the night. And in many ways, it's better off for it. Free from the shackles of arcade legacy or Super Nintendo expectations, it became a pure NES experience, tailored to the system, designed to impress, and polished in a way that most third games in a trilogy rarely are. Mechanically, the Manhattan Project of course takes the core and sands off most of the rough edges. It still follows the familiar brawler formula, walk right, bash foot soldiers, repeat, but does so with noticeably more polish and technical depth. Each turtle plays largely the same in terms of speed and range, but they've now got individual special moves, performed by pressing B and A simultaneously. These flashy attacks deal extra damage and can clear groups of enemies but come at a cost. They drain a bit of your health unless you're already on your last hit point. A smart little risk-reward mechanic that adds some technical flair to the button mashing. There's also the return of a toss attack. By holding down on the D-pad and pressing B, your turtle can grab an enemy and hurl them across the screen. It's immensely satisfying, and unlike in the previous NES outing, this time it's baked directly into the combat system. No grappling required, just timing and distance. Simple, elegant, effective. Two-player co-op is back, of course, and this time with a choice. Do you want to accidentally beat the shell out of your mate mid-battle, or would you rather switch off friendly fire and keep things civil? The game lets you toggle it, and frankly, this tiny option makes it a better two-player experience than half the beat-em-ups on the Super Nintendo. The control scheme is responsive, the movement is tight, and enemy variety ramps up at a steady pace. You even get to swap turtles between lives, so if your favourite ninja lizard gets flattened, you can tag in a fresh one, rather than being stuck sulking with Donatello while dreaming of Rembrandt. The Manhattan Project might not reinvent the genre, but what it does right. It's classic NES era Konami, focused, refined, and built for repeat play. For a game released when the NES was about to be shoved off the shelf by the Super Nintendo and the Mega Drive, the Manhattan Project is surprisingly ambitious. It's a bit like watching someone juggle chainsaws on a unicycle and realising halfway through that they're doing it on a trampoline. So let's dig even deeper into why this one's great. To do so, let's start with the obvious. The visuals! For NES standards, this thing looks brilliant. The turtles and enemies are large, detailed, and animate with a surprising amount of flair. Bosses like Rocksteady and Super Shredder are properly chunky, and the game even manages to throw multiple oversized sprites on screen at once without crashing into a flickery, seizure-inducing mess. Though yes, there's still flicker. It's the NES, not witchcraft. Unlike its predecessor, levels are more than just left to right corridors. Several feature multi-directional scrolling, downward sections on the beach, elevators, even some pseudo-vertical climbs. It's a level of environmental variety that most NES beat-em-ups didn't even attempt. There are also lovely little touches peppered throughout. Foot soldiers smash through glass windows, helicopter enemies drop troops onto rooftops, conveyor belts, lasers, trains, exploding scenery. It all adds to a welcome sense of chaos and texture. Audio-wise, it's peak Konami. The soundtrack slaps, to put it scientifically. The tunes make full use of the NES's primitive sound chip to deliver catchy, energetic tracks that match the on-screen carnage. Sound effects are chunky and satisfying with plenty of punch and just the right amount of crunch. But what makes the Manhattan Project truly special is that it never feels like it's pushing the hardware for the sake of it. Everything here, from the smooth animation to the scrolling tricks, is in service of making the game play better, feel better, and look more alive. If the NES had a victory lap, this would be it, and it's great right from the moment you hit start. The game opens in true Turtles fashion, with our heroes trying to enjoy a peaceful holiday in Florida, because nothing says ninja lifestyle like sunbathing in Key West. But before you can say past the factor 50, April O'Neil is kidnapped, again, and Manhattan is turned into a floating island by Shredder, again. I guess a standard Tuesday. Stage 1 kicks things off with a classic beach brawl, as foot soldiers storm the sands and the turtles return fire, this time in swim trunks. There's even a rare downward scrolling segment on the pier, a small but impressive technical flourish for the NES. At the end, Rocksteady shows up armed with a harpoon gun like he's trying out for Jaws 5 The Mutant Years. Then it's on to stage 2, Surfs Up, Foot Down, where the turtles hit the waves on hoverboards in a surprisingly smooth scrolling level. Foot soldiers leap from the sea with no explanation, as if they've been crouched on the seabed waiting for their cue. A flying foot soldier craft serves as the mini-boss, followed by a platform packed with turrets and Ground Chuck, who fights like Rocksteady after discovering whey protein. Stage 3 brings us to Bridge Mayhem, because no beat 'em up is complete without structurally questionable crossing. Slash makes his debut here as a mid-boss, followed by Bebop attacking from a vehicle, before later returning on foot with projectile attacks and spinning kicks, presumably after his ride failed its MOT. In stage 4 we arrive at a floating city. Yes, Manhattan has apparently floated into the clouds for reasons that remain unexplained. There's a window-smashing foot soldier, park-based brawls, and even a quick underground sequence where a train barrels past mid-fight. Dirtbag shows up as the end boss, and no, that's not just what your ex called you in the divorce papers. Stage 5 is all about sewer shenanigans, because what would a Turtles game be without a healthy amount of raw sewage? This level breaks convention by scrolling in multiple directions, making it a genuinely non-linear stage on the NES. A foot soldier rides a robo-ostrich halfway through, as sure, why not, and Leatherhead closes the show with whip-like tail strikes and theatrical flair. Stage 6 is Technodrome Trouble, the obligatory visit to the Death Star's less hygienic cousin. Conveyor belts, lasers, robots, and a flood of foot soldiers fill the screen. Razor pops up with an ice attack or two before we face Shredder himself, who's keeping April suspended like some kind of Broadway hostage. Beats him, and as tradition demands, he legs it. Then comes stage 7, Live to the Top. No early 90s brawler would be complete without a legally mandated elevator level. This one offers a nice sunset over Manhattan, while helicopters periodically drop in more goons. Toka turns up at the top as the rooftop boss, ensuring your ascent doesn't end quietly. Stage 8 is the final showdown, set aboard Krang's spaceship, a chaotic sci-fi nightmare filled with traps, foot soldiers in overdrive, and blaring music. Krang arrives in his mech war car, detaches his legs, and all hell breaks loose. Defeat him, and we move on to the real finale. Enter Super Shredder. Beefier, angrier, and clearly no stranger to protein powder. It's Shredder 2.0, or as I like to call him, Kevin Nash with his quads and dignity still intact. After a tense final scrap, he explodes in suitably dramatic fashion and the Turtles save the day once again. If all that mutant mayhem sounds like a bit much, or you just want to skip straight to the bit where you slap Krang out of his bionic bloomers, good news, the Manhattan Project includes a built-in cheat code, and not just any cheat code, but the legendary Konami code itself, Cowabunga indeed. At the title screen, punch in up, up, down, down, left, right, be a start. Do this correctly and you'll unlock a hidden options menu. From here you can set your starting stage, increase your lives, tweak the difficulty, and even access full sound test. Ideal for pretending your NES is a malfunctioning jukebox. Interestingly, this code wasn't even needed in the Japanese version. They just gave you the options menu for free, which feels a bit like being told you don't need to find the walk whistle because the game's already offering you a lift. It's not often that the Japanese version of a game is easier, but it is in this rare case. I guess they just didn't want anyone completing it after hiring it from Blockbuster over the weekend. They wanted Americans to actually buy copies. Contemporary reviewers years later have been quietly impressed. GoodEvil.net rated it 83%, praising its refined gameplay and amazing graphics for an NES title. Critics noted the large, detailed sprites, vibrant backgrounds, and stage variety as standout features, especially considering the console's age at the time. Boss fights were frequently singled out as highlights, with animations and attack patterns lifted straight from the cartoons and comics. Even the difficulty was praised, described as brutal but fair, the kind of challenge that made victory feel earned, not handed to you in a pizza box. Reviewers appreciated how the special moves and toss mechanics added depth, and how each turtle's unique flair gave co-op sessions real replay value. Over time, this quiet praise snowballed into cult reverence. Retrospectives now regularly cite the Manhattan Project as the best Turtles game on the NES, and in some circles the best beat-em-up on the system. Full stop. It's a game that somehow managed to outshine its arcade predecessor by doing less with more. No 4-player cabinets, no flashy hardware, just good design, great music and solid gameplay. Before the Cowabunga collection, finding a working cartridge wasn't cheap. This game held its value for years, not because it was rare, but because it was loved. And when people talk about Konami's golden age, this is the kind of game they're referring to. Unpretentious, technically clever, and fun as hell. So what have we learned? I guess that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3, The Manhattan Project, is a game trapped in a strange bit of history. Muddled numbering, regional weirdness, no arcade origins, and no flashy 16-bit debut. It was the middle child of the Turtles franchise, overlooked, underpromoted, and shoved out the door just as the NES was wheezing its last breath. And yet somehow, it might just be the best Turtles game Konami ever made exclusively for a home console. It's smartly designed, technically ambitious, and bursting with that late-era NES magic, when developers had truly figured out how to squeeze every ounce of power out of a little grey box. It improves on Turtles 2 in almost every way, holds up better than most licensed games of the era, and delivers an experience that's both mechanically sound and oozing with charm. Not bad for a game that never even made it to PAL territories the first time around. So whether you're discovering it for the first time through the Cowabunga collection, or digging it out of a shoebox with a smell of 1992 still clinging to the plastic, do yourself a favour, give the Manhattan Project a go. Because this isn't just a good Turtles game, it's one of the best reasons to still care about the NES. Don't forget you can use my links to snag Shredder's Revenge for under $15, Streets of Rage 4 for less than $10, and one of my all-time favourites, Double Dragon Gaiden, for under a $5. I've got massive discounts on thousands of games via the pinned comment, including up to 40% off brand new games like Fatal Fury, City of the Wolves and Expedition 33. Happy shopping and cheerio!